24. Mr. Hearn, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Coral Springs, Florida, banning medical marijuana dispensing organizations and treatment centers as defined herein, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. Request to open to the public, approve, and set second reading for January 17th. And just briefly, Mayor, and we had a workshop where this came up. We've been pushing the moratorium in hopes that the legislature would go ahead and, right now, as you know, it completely ties the city's hands. So dispensing facilities, we really have no regulation or control. We have the choice to prohibit or to regulate, the same as a pharmacy, which is rather wide open. And based on the majority of the commissioners, and as I understand it, really, this is well, I can tell you legally, it's no different than having the moratorium, except you're prohibiting it if and when we're allowed to regulate it under our home rule. We can always bring it back. But as of right now, instead of, our moratorium is about to expire again, instead of continuing it down the road, that seemed like the majority of the commission wanted this, and that's why it's before you. If you open to the public, Mayor, you can discuss.
Well, let me say some of my concerns. I am totally against the way the legislature put us in a position where we had to either approve it and they can go anywhere that a pharmacy can go. Totally against that. But I also believe that there is a legislative session coming up where they would have an opportunity to change that. I would be more inclined to, again, grant the moratorium until after the legislative session, because I think I think you're falling into what the legislature actually wanted to do, which is to force cities to come out and say, no, you can't have them, when 76% of the people in the state of Florida voted in favor of medical marijuana. So I'm telling everybody on this commission that my preference, if I could say my preference, would be to extend the moratorium until after the legislative session to see where the legislature goes. And if necessary, you know, I'll listen to what everybody else has to say.
Okay.
Public
I
hearing?
have a comment.
It's a public hearing, so let's have anybody who wants to talk about it. All right, seeing none, then Commissioner Carter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I look at this as more of a proactive stance. Until we know that we can regulate it, I think that, you know, this gives us more leverage over the moratorium. Because we're not saying that we can never change our minds. We can still move forward. But right now, this just, I think we're in better control of the future.
Commissioner Vignola.
My concern is, as some neighboring cities are going ahead and outright banning, and looking back to what happened when we had the pill mill situation here in Broward County. You know, not that painkillers are necessarily a bad thing, and they have their medical use, and you know, sometimes people need that. The concern for me was some of the issues that came into Coral Springs because of that. And when you go outside some of these places and you see people lining up from out of town, even out of state license plates, and some of the crime and things that came along with it, and people coming into Coral Springs just for that's my concern. My concern would be people coming into Coral Springs just for this. So that's why I was in favor of going forward with the ban, and we can, down the road, if things change, the legislature changes things and makes it a little more user-friendly for the cities, we can go ahead and change it.
Just to let you know, an additional moratorium won't change that argument. So I'm just telling you that was my preference, and again, I'm only one of 5. So, Vice Mayor Smagler.
I have to, your point, the moratorium, if we stuck with that and just extended it.
We're just status quo.
But here's my question. Can the legislature tie our hands and,
They've already tied our hands.
well, make it worse?
There's nothing they can make worse. All they can do is they can go ahead and give us some guidance as far as whether the city can go ahead and regulate. And if they come out and say, oh, we're going to let them on every corner, then I think that it would be appropriate for this city to say, no, we don't want that. I understand law enforcement's issues, but I also understand where the citizens are. And I happen to know that I have a partner whose son is now in intensive care in Miami, who was born with a genetic disease. was having about 150 seizures a day, and his doctor told him to go to Colorado to get some medical marijuana, and that kid now does not have a seizure a day. And unfortunately, I've seen that it does help some people with legitimate problems. Will you have illegitimate uses? You're damn right you're going to have it. That's the way society's been. That's the reason why I got a police chief, you know, to try to make sure that there is no illegal activity here. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse until they at least address the issue, not in a special session, but the way it should be addressed. But again, I'm here to listen. Go ahead.
I completely understand your point, and going forward, the moratorium would not tie our hands, right? But going forward with the ban, we could also go back at any time and not have to have staff go ahead and do the legwork to put this forward every 180 days.
Well,
And if at 190 days, things change, we can go ahead and make the change now. If at 60 days from now, things change, we can go ahead and make the changes. I'd rather go ahead and do this, and it's less work for staff. You don't have to just keep going through the process of it and keep having this discussion over and over, sometimes when things don't change.
I'm not worried about staff's workload. I just think that if you get some legislators who say, you see, out of, how many cities are there in Florida? 411? 411, I think. 410 banned it, so be it. And I think that that's what they're trying to do, is to get the cities to ban it so that they can come back and say, you know, cities just don't want it. So anyway, it's open for discussion. I don't see anybody who wants to discuss anything. If there's a motion, we'll accept the motion, and then we'll vote on it.
I'll move to approve and set second reading.
All right, move to approve. Is there a second?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Semaglia. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-2.